She stood in our kitchen and said, "I want a divorce." Handed me a lawyer's card. Said I could only speak through him. When I walked into that lawyer's office and said, "Yes, I'm the husband," his hands started shaking. That's when I knew she'd made a terrible mistake. She had no idea what I'd already found. My name is Julian Prescott. I'm 42 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I'd built a hedge fund that managed north of $800 million. My son Bryce was a senior at Dalton, headed for Princeton in the fall. My wife Sienna ran the Lockhart Prescott Arts Foundation, a philanthropic organization we'd founded together 12 years ago to support emerging artists and educational programs. We had the townhouse in the West Village, the summer place in the Hamptons, the life that looked perfect from every angle. We'd met at a charity auction 15 years ago. She was working for Sotheby's then, beautiful and brilliant, with a passion for contemporary art that matched my enthusiasm for market analysis. We built something together, not just a marriage, but a legacy. The foundation was supposed to be our shared dream, our way of giving back. I should have paid more attention when that dream became hers alone. It was a Tuesday evening in late September when everything shattered. I came home early from the office, around 6:30, carrying takeout from that Italian place Sienna used to love. Used to. Past tense. Funny how quickly things shift. She was standing in the kitchen, backlit by the setting sun through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Her dark hair was pulled back in that severe ponytail she wore to board meetings. She didn't look up when I walked in. Her fingers moved across her phone screen with practiced efficiency. "I got the pappardelle," I said, setting the bag on the marble island. "And that wine you mentioned last week." She finally glanced up. Her expression was flat, businesslike, the same look she gave disappointing grant proposals. "I want a divorce." 4 words, delivered without preamble, without emotion, without even the courtesy of eye contact afterward. She'd already looked back down at her phone. I stood there, one hand still in the takeout bag, trying to process what I just heard. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere upstairs, Bryce's music played faintly through his closed door. The normalcy of those sounds made the moment feel surreal. "What?" I managed. Sienna slid a business card across the island toward me. Thick stock, embossed lettering. Kenneth M. Hollister, ESQ family law specialist. High asset divorce. "All communication needs to go through him," she said, her voice as smooth and cold as the marble between us. "I'd appreciate it if you'd respect that boundary." "Sienna, what the hell is?" "I'm not discussing this with you, Julian." She picked up her bag, her movements deliberate and controlled. "Everything goes through Kenneth. I've already spoken with him about the foundation, the assets, custody arrangements for Bryce. He'll be in touch within the week. You can't just..." "I can, and I have." She walked past me, her heels clicking against the hardwood, leaving behind the faint scent of her perfume. Something new I didn't recognize. Something expensive and foreign. The front door opened and closed with a soft, final click. I stared at the business card. Kenneth M. Hollister. The name was familiar. I'd heard it whispered at cocktail parties, always with a mix of respect and dread. He was the attorney you hired when you wanted to win at any cost. The man who'd taken apart 3 different hedge fund managers in divorce proceedings, leaving them with fractions of what they'd built. And my wife had hired him without saying a word to me first. I turned the card over in my hands. My reflection wavered in the darkening window glass. A man who suddenly looked older than 42, holding takeout that would go cold, standing in a kitchen that no longer felt like home. Upstairs, I heard Bryce's door open. His footsteps on the stairs. "Dad," he called out. "Is Mom home?" I thought I heard. He appeared in the doorway, still in his Dalton lacrosse sweats, and stopped when he saw my face. "Dad, what's wrong?" I looked at my son, 17, on the verge of everything, still believing the world made sense, and realized I couldn't tell him yet. Not until I understood what was happening myself. "Nothing," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Your mom had to run out. You hungry?" That was the moment I stopped being her husband and became her opponent. The first 72 hours after Sienna left, I operated on autopilot. I told Bryce his mother was traveling for foundation business. Not entirely a lie, since she'd checked into the Four Seasons. I went to the office, ran my portfolio reviews, took calls from Dubai and Singapore. On the surface, nothing had changed. But at night, alone in our bedroom that now felt cavernous, I started digging. I'm a hedge fund manager. My job is finding patterns where others see noise, spotting discrepancies in financial statements, understanding when numbers tell a different story than words. I'd spent 20 years reading markets. Now I was reading my marriage, and what I found made my blood run cold. I started with the cloud storage we'd shared for the foundation. We'd always kept everything transparent: donor lists, grant applications, expense reports. It was our rule, our way of staying accountable. The access was denied. Password changed. I tried again, thinking I mistyped. Same result. She'd locked me out sometime in the last month, maybe longer. I'd been too busy with quarterly reports to notice. I pulled up our joint credit card statements instead. 3 charges jumped out immediately. A payment to a fertility clinic in the Upper East Side. $14,000. Dated 6 weeks ago. My hands went still on the keyboard. We'd never discussed having another child. Bryce was 17. That conversation was long over. I kept scrolling. More charges. A wire transfer labeled Creative Consulting Services for $32,000 to a company called Fontana Arts, LLC. Another one, same company, $28,000. Both in the last 4 months. I never heard of Fontana Arts. I opened a new browser tab and searched the name. The website was minimalist. White background, a few abstract paintings, a short bio. Matteo Fontana, contemporary artist, Milan-born, based in New York. His work explored the intersection of classical technique and modern desire. Whatever the hell that meant. There was a photo. Mid-30s, dark hair, the kind of carefully disheveled look that probably took an hour to achieve. He was attractive in that European way. Sharp cheekbones, intense eyes, an expression that suggested he knew secrets you didn't. I clicked through his gallery. The paintings were technically impressive, I supposed, though I'd never understood modern art. But one piece stopped me cold. It was titled Devotion. A woman's silhouette against a window, her face turned away, her posture suggesting both longing and distance. The light fell across her shoulders in a way that felt intimately familiar. I'd seen Sienna stand exactly like that, in exactly that light, in our bedroom, countless times. My phone buzzed. A text from Felix Ortiz, an old friend from Columbia Business School. We'd stayed close over the years, had dinner once a month, traded market insights. Hey man, tried calling. You good? Heard some rumors. Let's grab a drink. Rumors. Of course there were already rumors. In our circles, news traveled faster than stock tips. I texted back, tomorrow. The usual place. 7 p.m. I set the phone down and stared at Matteo Fontana's photograph. $32,000 plus $28,000. $60,000 to an artist I'd never heard my wife mention. A fertility clinic visit she'd never discussed with me. A painting that captured my wife's posture in our private moments. The pattern was emerging, and I didn't like what it revealed. I pulled out my phone again and called Trevor Reed. He answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the late hour. Julian, what's wrong? I need a lawyer, I said quietly. Not for the divorce. For something else. Can you recommend someone who does forensic accounting? Someone discreet. A pause. Then, how bad is it? I looked at my screen, at the wire transfers, at the painting titled Devotion. I don't know yet, I said, but I'm going to find out. Kenneth M. Hollister's office was everything I expected. Chrome and glass, minimalist art on the walls, a view of Central Park that probably added $50,000 to the annual rent. The receptionist had that polished look of someone who'd been hired as much for aesthetics as competence. Mr. Hollister will see you now, she said, her smile professional and empty. I walked through the frosted glass doors carrying a slim leather portfolio. Inside it was 3 days of work, bank statements, wire transfers, incorporation documents for Fontana Arts LLC, and a series of photographs that told a story Sienna probably thought was invisible. Hollister stood to greet me. Tall, silver-haired, expensive suit. The kind of man who'd perfected the art of looking sympathetic while planning your destruction. Mr. Prescott, he said, extending his hand. Thank you for coming in. I know this must be a difficult time. I didn't shake his hand, just stood there, meeting his eyes. His arm lowered slowly. A flicker of something crossed his face. Uncertainty. Maybe. Good. I prefer to keep things cordial, he continued, gesturing to the chairs. Mrs. Lockhart has made it clear she wants this to be as amicable as possible. Mrs. Lockhart, I repeated. She's already dropped my name. That was fast. It's her legal right to. I'm not here to negotiate, I said, cutting him off. I set the portfolio on his desk. I'm here to deliver a message. Hollister sat down slowly, his eyes on the portfolio. Mr. Prescott, I understand emotions are running high, but open it. He hesitated, then flipped open the cover. I watched his face as he scanned the first page. A wire transfer receipt for $32,000 to Fontana Arts, LLC. His eyes moved to the second page. Incorporation documents showing Matteo Fontana as the sole proprietor. The third page, a rental agreement for a loft in Tribeca, co-signed by Sienna Lockhart and M. Fontana. His jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. Page 4, I said quietly. He turned it over. It was a bank statement from the Lockhart Prescott Arts Foundation, with several transfers highlighted. Over $180,000, spread across 8 months, all labeled educational arts consulting, and routed to shell companies that eventually led back to Fontana. Hollister was quiet for a long moment. Where did you get these? He asked finally. I'm a co-founder of the foundation, I said. I have access to everything. Well, everything she didn't think to lock me out of fast enough. He closed the portfolio carefully, his courtroom composure reasserting itself. Even if these transactions occurred, that doesn't necessarily indicate. Page 7. He opened it again. This time it was a printed screenshot from a deleted Instagram story. Sienna and Matteo at a gallery opening, his hand on her lower back, both of them laughing. The timestamp was from 11 months ago. She thinks she deleted it, I said. But the internet never forgets. Especially when you pay someone who knows where to look. Hollister set down the folder. For the first time since I'd walked in, he looked genuinely uncomfortable. Mr. Prescott, what exactly are you proposing? I leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call my wife and tell her that I'm willing to discuss terms. But those terms include full financial disclosure from the foundation, every transaction, every donor, every grant for the last 3 years. You're going to tell her I want a forensic audit, and I want it completed by an independent firm of my choosing. That's highly unusual in a divorce proceeding. This isn't just a divorce proceeding, I said. This is potential fraud involving a 501c3 organization. Donor funds, potentially misappropriated for personal use. The IRS tend to take a dim view of that. His face went pale. You're threatening to involve federal authorities? I'm not threatening anything, I said, standing up. I'm explaining the situation. If Sienna wants this to be amicable, we do it my way. Full transparency. Fair division. And she steps down from the foundation immediately. And if she refuses? I picked up my portfolio. Then I make a phone call to the Southern District of New York and let them decide if $180,000 in questionable transfers warrants an investigation. I walked to the door, then paused and looked back. Oh, and Hollister? Tell her that her boyfriend's married. Has been for 9 years. 2 kids in Milan. I have the marriage certificate if she'd like to see it. The color drained from his face completely. Yes, I said quietly. I'm a husband. And for just a moment, Kenneth M. Hollister's hand started trembling against his desk. Trevor Reed called me at midnight, 3 days after my meeting with Hollister. Julian, we need to talk. In person, not over the phone. His voice had that edge I recognized from law school, the tone he used when something was seriously wrong. We met at a coffee shop in the West Village, the kind of place that stayed open late for insomniacs and shift workers. Trevor looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his usual polish replaced with something raw. I found something, he said without preamble. And you're not going to like it. He slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were bank statements. Not mine, not Sienna's. Felix Ortiz's. Felix, I said, confused. What does he have to do with? Look at the deposits. I scanned the pages. Regular salary deposits from his consulting firm. Nothing unusual. Then I saw them. Monthly payments, $3,500 each, going back 8 months. The source was listed as LS Consulting Services. LS, Trevor said quietly. Lockhart Sienna. I cross-referenced the LLC registration. It's one of her shell companies. My hands went still on the paper. Felix has been taking money from Sienna. For 8 months. I talked to a guy I know at his bank, off the record. The payment started about 2 weeks after you told Felix you were thinking about restructuring the foundation's investment strategy. The implications hit me like cold water. Every conversation I'd had with Felix over the past 8 months, every piece of market intelligence I'd shared, every private concern about the foundation's finances, all of it had gone straight back to Sienna. He's been reporting to her, I said. Trevor nodded. I'm sorry, man. I know you two go way back. I thought about all the dinners, the market discussions, the times Felix had asked casual questions about the foundation. How's Sienna handling the new grant programs? Any concerns about overhead costs? You thinking about bringing in outside auditors? I thought he was being friendly. He'd been mining for information. There's more, Trevor said. He pulled out another document. Medical records, marked confidential. I shouldn't have these, and I'll deny ever showing them to you. But you need to see them. It was a psychological evaluation, dated 4 months ago. My name was at the top. Dr. Richard Pembroke, licensed clinical psychologist. I never saw a psychologist, I said, scanning the document. I know. Neither did Dr. Pembroke, apparently. I tracked him down. Sienna paid him $15,000 to create a report suggesting you have controlling tendencies and emotional instability that could impact parental fitness. The words blurred on the page. She'd manufactured evidence, paid a professional to lie, creating a paper trail that could destroy me in a custody battle. Pembroke's scared now. Trevor continued. He knows this could cost him his license. He's willing to recant, go on record that Sienna paid him to fabricate the evaluation. I set the document down carefully, my hands shaking with barely controlled rage. She was building a case, I said quietly. For months, while I was sleeping next to her, trusting her, she was systematically constructing a narrative where I'm the villain. Julian and Felix helped her. I looked up at Trevor. My friend. Someone I trusted for 20 years. Trevor's expression was grim. What do you want to do? I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. Set up a meeting with Felix, I said. Tell him I want to discuss investment opportunities. Somewhere public, but quiet. And make sure you're there, recording everything. You're going to confront him. I'm going to give him a chance to come clean, I said. And when he doesn't, because men like that never do, I'm going to make sure every word of his confession is documented. Trevor studied my face. You've changed. In the last week, you've changed. No, I said, standing up. I've just stopped pretending the people I trusted deserve that trust. I walked out into the cold night air, my breath fogging in the October darkness. Somewhere across the city, Sienna was probably sleeping peacefully, confident in her strategy, her manufactured evidence, her paid informant. She had no idea the war had just shifted. The letter arrived on a gray Monday morning in early November. Official IRS letterhead, certified mail, the kind of envelope that makes your stomach drop even when you've done nothing wrong. Except Sienna had done plenty wrong. I opened it at my kitchen table, Bryce already at school, the house silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. The language was bureaucratic and formal, but the message was clear. The Lockhart Prescott Arts Foundation was under audit. Suspected misappropriation of donor funds. Potential violations of 501c3 regulations. I hadn't made that call to the Southern District yet. I'd held it in reserve, a nuclear option I wasn't sure I'd need to use. Someone else had made it for me. My phone rang. Trevor Reed. You see the news? He asked. What news? Channel 7 just ran a story. Prominent Manhattan Foundation under federal investigation. They're naming the Lockhart Prescott Foundation specifically. Someone leaked it to the press. I pulled up the news site on my laptop. There was, top of the local section, a photo of our foundation's building, Sienna's professional headshot from the website, and a quote from an unnamed source suggesting irregular financial transfers and potential fraud. This wasn't us, Trevor said. I didn't call anyone, and I know you didn't. Who else knew? I thought about Kenneth Hollister, about the documents I'd shown him, about how quickly powerful men distance themselves from sinking ships. Hollister, I said. He's covering his own ass. If there's an investigation, he doesn't want to be anywhere near it. Smart, Trevor said. Ruthless, but smart. My phone buzzed with another call. Felix. I declined it. He'd called 17 times in the last 3 days, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. I hadn't responded to a single one. There's something else, Trevor said. Felix's consulting firm put him on administrative leave this morning. Someone sent his managing partners copies of the bank statements showing Sienna's payments. They're conducting an internal investigation. Someone, I repeated. Yeah, someone who had access to those documents and knew exactly where to send them. I didn't confirm or deny anything, but Trevor knew me well enough to understand. The audit is going to be brutal, he continued. Full forensic accounting, donor interviews, transaction reviews going back 3 years. Sienna's going to be buried in subpoenas. Good, I said. Let her explain where $180,000 went. Let her justify paying her boyfriend consulting fees with donor money. Julian, this could splash back on you too. You're a co-founder. Your name is on everything. I know. That's why I'm cooperating fully. I've already contacted my own attorney, separate from you, to represent me specifically in the audit. I'm providing every document they ask for, every record, every communication. I want them to see I had nothing to do with this. That's smart, Trevor said. Distance yourself early. After we hung up, I sat there staring at the IRS letter. This was real now. Federal investigation, media coverage, the kind of scandal that ended careers and destroyed reputations. Sienna had built her entire identity around being a cultural leader, a philanthropic visionary. Now that image was disintegrating in real time. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Please. I can explain everything. S. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I blocked the number. An hour later, another text from a different number. Julian, I know you're angry, but this is getting out of control. The IRS, the media. We need to present a united front. For the foundation. For Bryce. Please call me. I blocked that number too. By evening, I blocked 6 different numbers. She was desperate now, scrambling to control the narrative, to pull me back into her orbit. But I was done being controlled. Bryce came home from lacrosse practice around 7, his face troubled. Dad, some kids at school were talking about Mom. About the foundation. Is it true? Is she in trouble? I'd been dreading this conversation. I gestured for him to sit down. Your mother made some decisions with foundation money that she shouldn't have made, I said carefully. The government is looking into it. It's serious, but it's her situation to deal with, not yours. Did she steal money? The word hung in the air between us. Steal. Such an ugly, simple word for such a complicated betrayal. She moved money in ways she wasn't authorized to, I said. Whether that's legally theft is for the authorities to decide. Bryce was quiet for a long moment. Is she going to jail? I don't know, son. I honestly don't know. He nodded slowly, processing. Are you okay, Dad? The question surprised me. I've been so focused on protecting him, on managing the crisis, that I hadn't stopped to consider my own state of mind. I will be, I said. We both will be. That night, alone in my study, I received an email from the Foundation's Board of Directors. Emergency meeting scheduled for Wednesday. Agenda: discussion of current federal investigation and potential leadership changes. Sienna was about to lose everything, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The fallout came faster than I expected. Wednesday morning, I received a forwarded email from one of our Foundation's board members. It was a press release from the Mercer Gallery in Chelsea, one of the 3 galleries that represented Matteo Fontana. In light of recent allegations regarding financial impropriety, the Mercer Gallery has elected to suspend its professional relationship with artist Matteo Fontana pending the outcome of ongoing investigations. We maintain the highest standards of ethical conduct. The statement went on, carefully worded to distance the gallery from any scandal while leaving the door open to resume the relationship if Matteo was somehow cleared. By noon, 2 more galleries had issued similar statements. The Luminoso Art Space and the Brooklyn Contemporary both suspended Matteo's upcoming exhibitions. His fall show, the one Sienna had been promoting on Instagram for months, was canceled outright. I pulled up his Instagram account. The comment section under his latest post was a bloodbath. Your patron's a thief, and you're complicit. How much of that foundation money went into your pocket? Does your wife in Milan know about your New York muse? That last comment had 1,700 likes. Someone had leaked the marriage certificate. The story about Matteo's wife and children in Italy was spreading through art world social media like wildfire. Gallery owners were distancing themselves. Collectors were pulling out of purchases, and Mateo's carefully crafted image as a romantic artist was disintegrating. Trevor called around too. "Did you see Fontana's statement?" he asked. "What statement?" "Check his website." I pulled it up. There, on the front page, was a message posted an hour ago. "I am deeply troubled by recent allegations involving the Lockhart Prescott Foundation. I want to be clear that I had no knowledge of any financial irregularities. All consulting fees I received were for legitimate services." "He's throwing her under the bus," I said. "Of course he is," Trevor replied. "He's trying to save his career. He'll claim he was just an innocent artist who accepted consulting fees in good faith. Sienna's the one who'll take the fall for fraud. What about the loft? The co-signed lease? He'll say it was a professional arrangement. Studio space. Nothing romantic. He'll deny everything that can't be proven in a photograph." I thought about the painting I'd seen, Devotion, the one that captured Sienna's silhouette so perfectly. Mateo had made money off his relationship with my wife, both through her payments and through his art. Now he was abandoning her to protect himself. "What piece of work?" I muttered. "Artists," Trevor said drily. "They're all the same. Passionate when it's profitable, pragmatic when it's not." That evening, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Julian." Sienna's voice, tight with stress. "We need to talk. Face to face." "We don't need to do anything," I said. "All communication goes through the lawyers. That was your rule, remember?" "Julian, please. This is spiraling out of control. The IRS, the media, the galleries. Mateo won't even return my calls. I need help." The desperation in her voice was almost satisfying. "Almost. You made your choices, Sienna. You hired a lawyer to handle communications. Use him." "Hollister dropped me," she said quietly. "This morning. He said the case was too complicated and recommended I find different counsel." I wasn't surprised. Hollister was smart enough to know when a client was radioactive. "Then find different counsel," I said. "I can't afford anyone good. The foundation accounts are frozen. My personal accounts are being reviewed. Julian, I have nothing liquid. Everything's tied up. You should have thought of that before you spent $180,000 on your boyfriend. It wasn't like that. The money was for legitimate consulting. Mateo was helping develop educational programs." "Stop," I said. "Don't lie to me anymore. I've seen the receipts. I know about the loft, the fertility clinic, the gifts. I know everything." Silence on the other end. "How did you find out?" she asked finally, her voice small. "I'm a hedge fund manager, Sienna. I find patterns for a living. You weren't nearly as careful as you thought." Another pause. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you face the consequences," I said. "The IRS will complete their audit. The foundation board will remove you from all positions. You'll lose your influence, your reputation, probably a significant amount of money in fines and legal fees. And I'll make sure Bryce understands exactly why our marriage ended. Don't poison him against me." "I won't have to," I said. "The truth will do that on its own." I hung up before she could respond. Outside my window, the city lights sparkled against the November darkness. Somewhere out there, Sienna was alone in a hotel room, abandoned by her lawyer, her lover, and her carefully constructed life. And I felt nothing but the cold certainty that justice, however delayed, was finally catching up. The emergency board meeting took place in a conference room at the foundation's offices on a cold Wednesday in mid-November. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing my best suit, carrying a folder with every document I need to prove my innocence and Sienna's guilt. The board consisted of 7 members, myself, Sienna, and 5 independent directors we'd recruited over the years. All of them had received copies of the IRS audit notice. All of them knew exactly why we were here. Sienna arrived last, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. No designer suit today, just a simple black dress and minimal makeup. Her hair was pulled back severely, emphasizing the dark circles under her eyes. She didn't look at me as she took her seat. Margaret Reynolds, our board chair and a retired museum director, called the meeting to order. "We're here to discuss the foundation's response to the current IRS investigation," she said, her voice crisp and professional. "Julian, you requested time to address the board. Please proceed." I stood, opened my folder, and began. "For the past 12 years, I've been proud to serve this foundation alongside my wife. We built something meaningful together, or so I thought. 3 weeks ago, I discovered that over $180,000 in donor funds have been transferred to shell companies connected to an artist named Matteo Fontana. I distributed copies of the wire transfers, the LLC registrations, the rental agreements. These transfers were authorized by Sienna alone, without board approval, and were labeled as educational consulting. In reality, they funded her personal relationship with Mr. Fontana. This represents a clear violation of our fiduciary duties and potentially criminal misuse of charitable funds. Sienna's face had gone white, but she didn't speak. Furthermore, I continued, I've discovered that Sienna used funds from our son's education trust, $43,000, for cosmetic surgery procedures, rhinoplasty, facial fillers, and other treatments. Money that was designated for Bryce's college education. That got reactions. Margaret's expression hardened. 2 other board members exchanged looks. I want to be clear, I said. I had no knowledge of these transactions. I've provided complete cooperation to the IRS and to our independent auditors. I'm prepared to step down from any leadership role if the board believes it's necessary, but I will not allow my reputation to be destroyed by actions I didn't take and didn't approve. I sat down. Margaret turned to Sienna. Mrs. Lockhart, do you wish to respond? Sienna stood slowly. Her hands were shaking. The transfers to Matteo were for legitimate consulting work, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He was developing curriculum for our arts education programs. The amounts may seem high, but where are the deliverables? Margaret interrupted. Where are the curriculum documents, the program proposals, the work product that justified $180,000? Sienna was silent. And the use of your son's trust fund? Margaret pressed. Can you explain that? I intended to replace it, Sienna said. It was temporary. I was going through a difficult time emotionally, and I made poor decisions. But I never intended to. Intent doesn't matter, Margaret said coldly. Impact does. You've compromised this foundation's integrity, violated donor trust, and potentially committed fraud. I'm calling for a vote. The motion was simple. Immediate removal of Sienna Lockhart from all positions within the foundation, including the board of directors. The vote was unanimous. 6-0. I abstained. Sienna gathered her things in silence and walked out. She didn't look back. After she left, Margaret turned to me. Julian, the board would like you to remain. We believe you acted in good faith, and we'll need your expertise to navigate the audit and rebuild trust with our donors. Will you stay on? I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Yes, I said, but only if we completely restructure our oversight. No single director should have the authority Sienna had. We need checks and balances. Agreed, Margaret said. We'll start immediately. I left the meeting feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The foundation would survive this, and I'd made sure everyone knew exactly who was responsible for nearly destroying it. I was in my office when Trevor called, his voice urgent. Turn on channel 4. Now, I pulled up the live stream on my laptop. It took me a moment to process what I was seeing. Sienna, sitting across from Miranda Cole on the Cole Report, a local morning talk show that specialized in human interest stories and celebrity interviews. Oh no, I breathed. She's trying to control the narrative, Trevor said. Watch. Miranda was in full sympathetic mode, nodding as Sienna spoke. I want to be clear about something, Sienna was saying, her voice steady but emotional. My marriage to Julian became increasingly controlling over the years. He managed every aspect of our finances, questioned every decision I made. When I tried to develop my own programs at the foundation, programs that could have helped hundreds of young artists, he blocked me at every turn. My jaw dropped. She's lying, I said. Keep watching, Trevor replied grimly. Miranda leaned forward. So the money in question, the transfers the IRS is investigating, those were for legitimate foundation work. Absolutely. Matteo Fontana is an incredibly talented artist and educator. The consulting fees were entirely appropriate for the scope of work he provided. But Julian saw it as a threat to his control. What about the allegations regarding your son's trust fund? Miranda asked. Sienna's eyes filled with tears. That's been completely mischaracterized. I made a temporary transfer during a cash flow issue. I was going to replace it within weeks. Julian is using it to turn my own son against me. The comment section was exploding. Half the viewers were sympathetic to Sienna, calling her brave for speaking out. The other half were calling her a liar and a thief. She's making this worse, I said. She's lying on television. Let her, Trevor said. Because in about 30 seconds, Miranda's going to ask the question her producers fed her. On screen, Miranda consulted her notes. Mrs. Lockhart, we've received information that Mr. Fontana is actually married with children in Italy. Were you aware of that? Sienna's face went completely still. That's not relevant to the Foundation's work. But you were in a personal relationship with him, weren't you? While you were still married to Julian. The pause stretched too long. My personal life is complicated, Sienna said finally. But it has nothing to do with how Foundation funds were used. Actually, Miranda said, and I could hear the shift in her tone. We've obtained documentation showing that several of the payments to Mr. Fontana were made during the same weeks he signed a lease with you for an apartment in Tribeca. Can you explain that? Sienna stood up abruptly. This interview is over. She pulled off her microphone and walked off set. The camera stayed on Miranda's surprised face for a moment before cutting to commercial. My phone started ringing immediately. Reporters, Foundation donors, colleagues. I ignored them all except one, Margaret Reynolds. Did you see it? She asked. Every painful second. She just destroyed what was left of her credibility. The board is issuing a statement within the hour, completely distancing the Foundation from her claims. We'll make it clear she was acting alone, without authorization, and that her characterization of events is contradicted by documentary evidence. Thank you, Margaret. After we hung up, I sat there watching the clip replay on social media. The hashtag #LockhartLies was already trending. Her attempt to play the victim had backfired spectacularly. Trevor called back. The producers had those documents ready. Someone fed them the information. Someone who wanted to make sure she couldn't spin this, I said. Someone who understands how media works. I didn't confirm anything, but we both knew. Sometimes the best revenge isn't confrontation. It's giving someone enough rope and watching them use it. The final settlement meeting took place in early January, in a conference room that felt too large for the 3 people it contained. Me, Sienna, and a court-appointed mediator. Our lawyers had worked out the details in advance. This was just the formality of signing. Sienna looked like a ghost of herself. Her clothes hung loose, her hair had lost its shine, and the confident woman who had once commanded gallery openings now couldn't meet my eyes. The mediator laid out the terms. Full custody of Bryce to me, with supervised visitation for Sienna twice monthly. The townhouse remained mine. The Hamptons property would be sold, proceeds split. Sienna would relinquish all claims to my hedge fund and personal accounts. Most significantly, she would resign from all positions with the Lockhart Prescott Foundation, now being renamed the Prescott Educational Trust. She would have no involvement, no access, no say in its future. The IRS settlement, the mediator continued, requires Mrs. Lockhart to pay back $184,000 in misappropriated donor funds, plus penalties. The payment plan has been arranged through her attorney. Sienna's hands trembled as she signed each page. The trust fund for Bryce, the mediator said, shows an unauthorized withdrawal of $43,000. Mrs. Lockhart has agreed to repay this amount with interest within 18 months. Another signature. Another piece of her life signed away. When it was done, Sienna stood slowly. For the first time since we'd sat down, she looked directly at me. I'm sorry, Julian, she said quietly. For everything. I studied her face, looking for manipulation, for strategy. But all I saw was exhaustion and regret. I wish I could believe that, I said. But sorry doesn't undo what you did. It doesn't restore what you stole from our son. It doesn't repair the Foundation's reputation. Sorry is just a word, Sienna. And words are all you have left. She flinched, but didn't respond. She gathered her papers and left without looking back. I sat there alone for a moment, staring at the signed documents that ended 15 years of marriage. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired. Trevor met me for dinner that night at our usual place. How are you holding up, he asked. I don't know. I said honestly. It's over. I won, I guess. But it doesn't feel like winning. Because it's not, Trevor said. It's surviving. There's a difference. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. About the Foundation's future, about Bryce's college plans, about the strange emptiness that comes when a war finally ends. What about you? Trevor asked. What happens now? I thought about the question. Now I rebuild. The foundation, my relationship with Bryce, my life. In that order. And Sienna? Sienna is no longer my concern, I said. She made her choices. Now she lives with them. 3 weeks later, I received a letter forwarded from my attorney. It was from Matteo Fontana, handwritten, postmarked from Milan. Mr. Prescott, I want you to know that I never intended to cause harm to your family. What happened between Sienna and me was complicated, but I take responsibility for my part in it. I've returned to my wife and children, and I'm working to repair the damage I've caused there. I hope someday you can find peace. MF. I read it twice, then tore it up and threw it away. His apology meant nothing. His guilt meant nothing. He'd gotten his money, made his art, and gone home to his real life. The consequences belonged to Sienna alone. But somehow, knowing he felt guilty made the whole thing feel a little more finished. 18 months after the divorce was finalized, I stood in the newly renovated headquarters of the Prescott Educational Trust. We'd moved to a larger space in Midtown, hired new staff, and completely restructured our oversight systems. The foundation was thriving. We'd launched 3 new scholarship programs, partnered with 15 schools, and rebuilt donor trust through radical transparency. Every transaction, every grant, every decision was documented and publicly available. Margaret Reynolds had become a close ally, and together we'd assembled a board that took accountability seriously. We'd learned from Sienna's betrayal, built systems to prevent it from happening again. Bryce was finishing his first year at Princeton, excelling in his economics courses and playing lacrosse. He spoke to his mother occasionally, brief phone calls that satisfied the court's requirements, but not much else. She's trying, he told me once. But I'm not ready to forgive her. Maybe I never will be. That's your choice to make, I said. Not mine, not hers. Yours. Felix Ortiz had left New York. His consulting firm had terminated him, and he'd moved somewhere in the Midwest to start over. I'd heard through mutual friends that he was working at a small firm, making a fraction of what he used to earn. I felt nothing about that. Not satisfaction, not pity, just indifference. One evening in late spring, I was working late at the foundation when I received an unexpected visitor. Sienna, standing in the lobby, asking if she could speak with me. I almost said no, but something made me agree. We sat in my office, the city lights spreading out below us. She looked better than she had at the settlement, healthier, more composed. But there was a sadness in her eyes that I recognized as permanent. I wanted to tell you in person, she said. I'm leaving New York, moving to Portland. There's a small nonprofit there that's willing to give me a chance. Data entry, administrative work. Nothing glamorous. Good, I said. I hope you succeed. She smiled faintly. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to believe me when I say I regret everything. But I wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better. For Bryce, if not for you. Bryce deserves that, I said. He deserves a mother who's honest, who's present, who doesn't put her own needs above his. Can you be that person? I'm trying to learn how, she said quietly. We talked for a few more minutes, polite and distant, like strangers who once knew each other. When she left, I knew it would probably be the last time I ever saw her. And I was okay with that. That night, I called Bryce at school. Hey, Dad, he answered. What's up? Nothing specific. Just wanted to check in. How are you doing? Good. Really good, actually. I got an A on my macro midterm. That's fantastic. We talked for a while about classes, lacrosse, his plans for the summer. Normal things. Father and son things. When we hung up, I sat at my desk and looked around my office. The foundation plaques on the wall, the photos of students we'd helped, the plans for new programs spread across my desk. This was what remained after the betrayal, after the lies, after everything burned down. Not revenge, not victory, just the quiet satisfaction of building something real, something good, something that would outlast all the damage Sienna had done. I thought about that first night, when she'd handed me the lawyer's card and walked out. How lost I'd felt, how unprepared. I'd survived it, more than survived. I'd grown stronger, clearer, more certain of who I was and what mattered. Sienna had tried to erase me from the narrative of our life together. Instead, she'd erased herself, and I'd moved forward without her. It was everything I needed.